Quick review of Escitalopram, SSRI, also known brand name Lexapro. So this is the brand, it's not Lexapro, but it's Aurobino. But I just wanted to make a quick video about my overall opinion. I went from 5 milligrams to 10 milligrams to 15 milligrams to 22.5, and ultimately now I am still on 30 milligrams. It's also 10 milligrams above the maximum recommended dose, but sometimes you gotta, you know, try higher doses, of course, with your consultation or with advice of your doctor. But to summarize it, unfortunately, I've never really experienced a significant improvement in anxiety and or depression, except for one specific thing which I found very weird, and it worked almost instantly within a week: agoraphobia. Basically, what it helped me most with, which wasn't necessarily my biggest problem. My biggest problem for now is still definitely is the anxiety and the depression. But the agoraphobia reduced almost instantly on 5 or 10 milligrams within a week, meaning that I was no longer having this intense panic when, for example, sitting in a car and a thought comes up like, what if I can't escape right now? You know what I mean? Or sitting in a public transportation train. It is somewhat comparable to social anxiety disorder and panic disorder, because a thought might come up, what if I have a panic attack, and everybody's going to laugh at me and going to think that I'm insane. But it was more, in my case, more specifically about being afraid of not instantly being able to leave. So that is the thing I'm very grateful for, that has definitely been reduced by the SSRI. Again, I take 3 of these, so 30 milligrams a day. Other than that, let me think, I didn't really prepare anything for this video. Side effects. So the one and only major side effect, and I'm lucky in general speaking that in overall the side effects are low for me. But the one and only major side effect that I have experienced is an increase in appetite. Sometimes I can be a fucking eating machine. But for me, luckily, I am naturally skinny. So the weight that I put on it's actually a good thing for me. But especially on a dose like 30 milligrams, you can absolutely expect to increase your caloric intake by at least 5 to 10% a day. And also, I think there's been done a study on this, that it also increases your preferences for high fast-acting carbohydrates. So the SSRI not only, this also happens on antipsychotics, by the way. For example, Seroquel, which I'm also prescribed 25 milligrams for sleep. But it specifically increases your cravings for sugary foods and just hyper or ultra processed foods in general. But to summarize it, to make this not too much of a long ramble, unfortunately, it hasn't really significantly helped with anxiety and depression. I would say at best 10 to 15%. Other than that, there are also, the side effect of the increased appetite, which for me isn't a problem. Sexual side effects have been minimal. So that's also, I have to be considered to be lucky, because many, many people discontinue the SSRI because of sexual side effects. Emotional numbing, I really have not experienced that. And I would say, by the way, that most people see the emotional blunting as a side effect, whereas I think that the emotional blunting is actually the supposed effect. Because the way I see it, SSRI, it definitely is, of course, it inhibits dopaminergic signaling. So, for example, I just drank coffee. Before the SSRI, you would feel more of the dopamine. And now on 30 milligrams, it's you're less able to experience that pleasure and that typical feeling of dopamine from caffeine or, for example, nicotine or even cocaine. So what SSRI does basically is it takes your peaks and it takes your lows and it stabilizes more, if you will. So that can be very beneficial. For example, when a person is severely suicidal, they usually give lithium treatment because that is the fastest acting mood stabilizer and it makes the person more stable. But with that also comes that your highs, your natural highs in life, or your cocaine highs, I'm not proud of it, but I've went 2 to 3 days of cocaine binges with alcohol. So that's another thing. Yes, you can survive that on SSRI, and I didn't do it all the time. So not that you're going to think that that is why the SSRI didn't work. But even when you take something like cocaine, you will feel less of the dopamine that you would normally feel because SSRI inhibits some of the dopaminergic signaling. So to end the video, to summarize it, about 10 to 15% of improvement in anxiety and depression. For me, specifically, agoraphobia is almost completely gone, and I'm very happy about that. Secondly, the side effects for me, of course, it depends completely on the person, are bearable, mainly a pretty big increase in appetite, but for me, that's not a big problem, except for, if I'm on this for life, I ultimately might become very plus sized. I don't know. Other than that, not so much emotional blunting, and even when there is emotional blunting, it's more like the supposed effect. For example, I also have generalized anxiety disorder. Sometimes it feels like the SSRI is reducing it because you just don't care as much anymore. Not necessarily that the anxiety is reduced, but you have more of a sense of apathy. That, for example, the thought comes up, oh, what if it's lung cancer? What if it's this? What if it's melanoma, skin cancer? It's not necessarily that, in my case, that the escitalopram reduces that intensity of the anxiety. It just increases more of the sense, let it be cancer, I don't care. It's more like apathy. So that is the I would say the emotional blunting aspect of it. But it's never been that severe. There's some people, very rare by the way, don't get misled by the misinformation. I believe it's 1 in 203 people that one study found. They might develop PSSD, post-SSRI sexual dysfunctioning, which it includes not only that basically their slung stops working, but also that they have supposedly permanent emotional numbing. I do believe that it can happen, but of course it is very rare. And just to finish it, I've never experienced very significant emotional blunting, and sometimes I wish I did, because it's gonna sound crazy. I don't want to be Dexter from the series Dexter, a psychopath serial killer, but I mean, sometimes I wish I had less emotional intensity, if you know what I mean. Let me think, did I forget something else? Yeah, so I will say this though, if you miss a dose one day, so I'm on 30 milligrams right now, missing 1 day of 30 milligrams is not a problem. 2 days, you will definitely feel brain saps. So it's like a sort of, it's hard to really describe. It's sort of shock, electric shock, specifically when you turn your head. It's not as bad as people make it out to be, but if you quit cold turkey, I would never do that, because especially quitting cold turkey from 30 milligrams, that would be horrifying. So would I recommend it? It completely depends on the individual again. For example, about 15% of the people have a genetic polymorphism of a serotonin transporter that would never respond to any SSRI. So they would never benefit from it. Then the majority of people are kind of like me, where you're in the middle. You have some benefits and you also have some negatives. And then a small percentage of people really benefit from it. And a small percentage of people will have really bad negatives, such as PSSD, post SSRI sexual dysfunctioning, which isn't just that their schlong doesn't work anymore, but also that they have emotional numbness. For example, some people explained that they have permanent tinnitus. I don't even know how to pronounce that in English. That they constantly have a ringing in their ears. I've never had that. And of course, you have to remember that it can happen, but of course, it's rare. It's very rare. And the last thing I will say before ending the video, overall, my recommendation would be, if you are mildly depressed, absolutely don't start with any medication. If you have mild anxiety/depression, always go for CBT first and lifestyle changes. Moderate, I also wouldn't do it. If you have moderate anxiety/depression, I still would go for maximum psychotherapy combined with lifestyle changes. But in the cases, and it was definitely for me, severe anxiety and severe depression, also with suicidal ideation, I would absolutely recommend trying medication. But be aware, of course, that in the first couple of weeks, it might ironically increase the symptoms of anxiety and depression. And if you're going to start, you might want to try a light benzodiazepine, not for longer than 2 weeks, because the benzos are very dangerous and very addictive. Or something like quetiapine. It's also called Seroquel, brand name. It's an antipsychotic, but you only take about 25 milligrams. And at 25 milligrams, it mainly works as a histamine blocker, which makes you very sleepy. And it works very well for sleep. It's not addictive compared to the benzos. The benzos are horrible compared to the Seroquel. So yeah, that's what I would say. I hope this video, and it was a long ramble. I didn't prepare anything, but I hope it was helpful. Let me know any questions. I'll answer them in the comments.